You're a lawyer. You're supposed to be helping people.
I am.
In a mask. Do you know what they call that? A vigilante. Someone who acts outside of the law.
Foggy.
She deserves to know.
You can't tell her, Foggy, please.
Is this what you do?
I gotta tell you, it was perfect. Perfect. Everything, down to the last minute details.
Then you gotta start eating throwaway crap from supermarket dumpsters. Begging for change, for food. Just once, I want a dessert.
It's the biggest piece of dog shit that I have ever heard. Everyone's laughing, by the way, but it's true because everybody's heard it too. Everyone heard it, right? They look at all, everyone's like, yeah, big piece of dog shit.
The Marvel Cinematic Universe is in the middle of an identity crisis, and nothing proves that more than Daredevil Born Again. Coming off the back of Hollywood's second work stoppage in the last 5 years, Disney decided it was finally time to bring back one of the fan-favorite characters from an extremely popular TV show that was originally hosted on Netflix, Daredevil. Daredevil Born Again was supposed to be 18 episodes long originally and completely separate from the Netflix series. But due to struggles with the show and complaints from within, during the writer's strike, Disney actually decided to bring back Eldon Henson as Foggy Nelson and Deborah Ann Woll as Karen Page and re-tie Daredevil Born Again back to the original, very popular Netflix series. Disney also brought in a new showrunner named Dario Scardapane, who was originally a writer for Punisher over on Netflix. Scardapane only officially worked on 3 episodes of this show, and he instead took elements from the original series and combined that into episodes 2 through 7. Now, I personally was very excited for the return of Daredevil, especially with Charlie Cox and Vincent D'Onofrio reprising their roles from the Netflix series. Daredevil is one of my all-time favorite superheroes. He has great comics, and the show was originally amazing on Netflix. All the fight scenes, the action, the dialogue, everything about it was almost perfect. So, when Disney finally decided it was time to bring Charlie Cox's Daredevil into the Marvel Cinematic Universe officially, despite that disconnectedness that the original Netflix show had from the MCU, I personally was very excited. Now, the excitement went on to taper down as Disney kept releasing bad products. I already said the Marvel Cinematic Universe was in the middle of an identity crisis, and this all began post-Avengers Endgame when Marvel didn't know where it was going to go. Daredevil is a great example of the identity crisis, but it's not the first. We saw this with flops like Captain America Brave New World or The Marvels, and this was seen with movies that just weren't as popular, such as The Eternals or even Shang-Chi, which did receive very positive reviews, however, in the end was not as big of a success as Marvel's previous products. The writer's strike did allow Disney a chance to pivot and try to go back to creating good stories with good characters, and unfortunately Daredevil Born Again proves that they might just not be able to anymore. Daredevil Born Again was a layup. They could have very easily just brought back showrunners and writers from the original series and tried to make a quote-unquote season 4 of the Netflix show, but instead they tried to do their own thing and it just failed and fell flat on its face. The biggest problem with the Daredevil Born Again series is that Daredevil is barely in it. This show was allergic to having superheroes in the superhero show doing superhero stuff. In fact, more action in the show came from Punisher instead of Daredevil. Now this could be due to the fact that Dario Scardapane was originally a writer on Punisher and maybe he's just more comfortable writing that character. But Daredevil hardly did anything. He was only in about 15 minutes of screen time total, being episode 1, 7, and 9. He wasn't in any other scenes with a suit on. The series as a whole started off pretty well with episode 1. I actually really enjoyed this episode, and it made me look forward to the rest of the series. I thought the opening fight scene was great. The twist of Foggy Nelson's death was sad, but also kind of expected with the build up to it.
Well, yeah, there's that is a as you reference at the beginning of this episode of this season, there is a very traumatic event which is gonna change Matt Murdock's life for the rest of his life.
Stop spoiling it, you vile woman!
I think he'll probably never be the same again. It's brutal. I'm still not convinced it's the right thing to do.
Oh, great. Now I know everything. I don't even need to see it anymore.
I also didn't mind how the story went on in episode 1. It really began doing a good job of building up the series to what it could be. Mayor Fisk is one of the most fascinating concepts in comics created by Charles Soule during his run of the Daredevil character, picking up after Mark Waid. Unfortunately, episode 1 also introduced the weakest part of this show, the side characters. We got to meet Daniel Blake, Kirsten McDuffie, Cherry, Heather Glenn, Buck, BB Urich, and Fisk's campaign advisor. All of these characters were people that Disney tried to develop as they wrote the story for Daredevil Born Again, and frankly, it just didn't work. None of the characters ever had interesting concepts or dialogue, their storylines were pointless, and most of them served absolutely no purpose to the show whatsoever. No example of this is better than that of Cherry. Now, I hated Cherry in this show. He serves one purpose, and that's in episode 3, to deliver Nikki Torres to the courthouse in a very rip-off version of what was transferring Agent Nadeem to the courthouse in season 3 of Daredevil. This is literally the only important thing Cherry does in the entire series. After this, all he does is show up and tells Matt, hey man, nope, you can't be Daredevil anymore, that's not good for you. Kirsten McDuffie is a character from the Daredevil comics who appears in this show as Matt's legal partner. Kirsten in the comics is cocky at the best of times and annoying at the worst of times. In this show, she's basically just annoying. She doesn't do anything, just like Cherry. All she does is randomly will tell Matt that he has to go do something to further advance the plot in weird ways that don't even really work. This season is honestly just boring. So episode 1 is great. Episode 2 is alright and does a really good job of setting up episode 3. Episode 3 was really good with the trial of White Tiger, and I think had the potential to be one of the best Daredevil episodes ever. It had great law room scenes, but unfortunately, when there were witnesses talking about all the heroic different things White Tiger did, we didn't get to see it. And that is the crux of what made Daredevil Born Again honestly bored again. The show would not show us superhero stuff. Now, I love Matt Murdock, but Matt Murdock does not really give you as much entertainment value as seeing Daredevil on the screen. It didn't even have to just be Daredevil. I just really like to see superheroes in superhero shows doing superhero stuff in superhero costumes. So it's great to hear about all this heroic stuff White Tiger did, but I really wish that the writers and showrunners actually did a job of showing us. So the first 3 episodes did give me hope that Born Again actually could be a somewhat alright version of season 4 of the Netflix show. I thought that they were pretty decent at setting up what could be a future. And unfortunately, then came episode 4, which has the worst scene in Daredevil history, where Matt Murdock goes to a police precinct to deal with a new client who is arrested because he stole 6 boxes of Fiddle Faddle caramel corn. Now, the Fiddle Faddle guy is honestly just whiny and insufferable and says a lot of really stupid stuff. It was arrested about 70 times before getting arrested for stealing 6 boxes of Fiddle Faddle caramel corn, and he is just an insufferable character to Matt the entirety of the time Matt's offering him help. He's saying he wants probation and he deserves probation. So Matt, being a really good lawyer, manages to go out and get the guy 10 days sentence, which is amazing considering all the prior crimes he has. And then Fiddle Faddle guy loses his mind and absolutely goes off on Charlie Cox's Matt Murdock, complaining about how the system has screwed him over and how if he gets arrested again, he can't go pick up his free Social Security wellness benefits and free money from the government.
Last time I got 30 days, know what happened? I missed my SSI appointment and they cut my benefits. Bad enough trying to live off food stamps, but when they cut it, man, it takes forever to get that shit back regular.
Now, instead of Matt Murdock telling him off or saying, you get what you get and you don't throw a fit, no, Matt tells him he's right, which is just stupid and doesn't make any sense for Matt Murdock's character. And the show itself knows it doesn't make sense because later in that episode, we get one of the best scenes in Daredevil history when Punisher and Matt directly interact and they're talking about Foggy's death and a whole bunch of stuff, and it's really an incredible scene that shows what 2 really good actors with John Bernthal and Charlie Cox can do with great dialogue written. There's just one small problem with it. The entire argument they have where Punisher gets really mad at Daredevil for calling him a victim, he says, don't ever use that word at me, is a complete contradiction of what we saw earlier with Fiddle Faddle Guy, where Matt Murdock completely agrees with Fiddle Faddle Guy that he's a victim of the system and can't get off his butt and go do work. In this episode, episode 4, is the first one that really started to derail this series for me. It was a narrative mess as a whole, and it didn't really develop much story other than leading us into figuring out who killed White Tiger. Was it actually the Punisher? And I'm surprised to no one it wasn't. It also did set up Muse, who I had a lot of hope for because Muse is a very cool villain from Charles Soule's Daredevil comic run. Now, if episode 4 wasn't bad enough, oh boy, get ready for episode 5 because it's a filler episode in a 9-episode show of television. That's right. Back when Netflix was making Daredevil, we got 13 episodes of great content and everything had importance to the story. Episode 5 of a 9-episode series, Daredevil Born Again, is a boring filler episode. Matt's in a bank getting a loan, and he deals with Kamala Khan's dad, who is essentially there to advertise Miss Marvel to us. He advertises a Funko Pop.
This is her, right here. A custom-designed Funko in her honor.
He advertises his daughter a lot, and he just keeps going, have you heard of my daughter, Kamala Khan? Have you heard of Miss Marvel? Have you heard of Kamala Khan? Buy this Funko Pop. And it's it doesn't make sense, it's stupid, and it doesn't really fit well in the show. There are some good action scenes in the show, however, they're kind of ruined with a lot of fast cuts that we see present throughout episodes that were created prior to the creative overhaul. It's really shaky and fast cut, and it cuts every single freaking time, every time there's a punch. And it's really distracting, and it doesn't look that good. I mean, we already saw in episode 1, as well as just the original Daredevil series as a whole, that long drawn-out fight scenes without as many cuts, steady cameras, they can look really good when you have good stuntmen, which Marvel does, and have good choreographers, which they also have. I don't love the style they took with these fight scenes. I think there's potential there for them to be kind of cool, but at the end of the day, they kind of just fell flat in the end because of all the cuts. Everything felt disconnected. Also, this episode felt very much like a Mark Waid kind of comic run. Matt seemed super happy-go-lucky, which is one of the unique parts of Mark Waid's comic run. He really doesn't seem to care about his secret identity either in this episode. He's openly doing super-powered stuff in front of Kamala Khan's dad.
Exactly what kind of a lawyer are you? A really good one.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
Once the episode comes to its conclusion, nothing has changed. The story is exactly as it was through the first 4 episodes, and nothing was affected by this story at all. This was just a filler episode to pass time and give Disney another episode to clog into this 8-episode series and turn it into a 9-episode series. Episode 6, we finally get to see Daredevil back in costume. He's fighting Muse after Daredevil gets told off by little young, soon-to-be female white tiger Angela Ayala, the niece of Hector from episode 3. Angela lectures Matt about how irresponsible he's being, despite the fact that he's blind and she doesn't know he's Daredevil, and then goes off and gets kidnapped by Muse, who is going to use her as a subject for his next artwork. We get a pretty great fight scene between Daredevil and Muse, and unfortunately, this is where Disney decided to remove Muse from his comic powers. In the comics, Muse has super speed, super strength, and most importantly, he is completely invisible to Daredevil's radar sense. So when Daredevil's fighting Muse, he actually can't see him in the comics. They seem to have just removed this in the show. They also gave Muse a muscle suit, whereas in the comics, he's much more of a like twink, kind of twig build looking guy. So I didn't love that costume choice. Other than that, I thought his costume looks pretty good, a lot better than Bullseye. Whatever costume that was, they put him in with his scuba diver gear and not a comic look at all, and weird purple Power Rangers looking outfit.
If I can't scuba, then what's this all been about? What am I working toward?
But overall, I thought Muse's costume wasn't bad. I do wish that they hadn't used a muscle suit, and they had just kind of had it been a more skinny, agile looking guy. I think they should have brought his superpowers in. That would have made him a much more interesting villain. But the next episode, episode 7, shows us that they didn't care about Muse being an interesting villain, because we get a terrible scene where Marvel decides to just wipe off the villain they've been setting up the entire season by having him killed by Matt's girlfriend at the end of the episode. This is They spent the entire season building up Muse to be the big bad, who's a very good villain in the comics, like I said, and then after 2 scenes, they shoot him dead in the middle of Heather Glenn's office, and for whatever reason, they thought that was a great idea. It was all so that Kingpin, at the very end of the episode, could hold up Muse's mask and say no more vigilantes. Episode 7 was really when I kind of left my brain at the station for the remainder of this show. I had been really excited to see Muse, and then after that episode, it honestly just felt like, what's the point anymore? They spent the entire season building this guy up, and then they just shot him and killed him and did no cool character development. Nothing came of it, and Muse was there for 2 episodes. Nice to meet you. He's gone. Episode 8, we see that the task force is now the villains, the main villains of this show. Kingpin's vigilante task force was led by Officer Powell. Now, episode 8 finally remembered that Bullseye was a member of the cast, and they brought Wilson Bethel back from episode 1, and we got to see Bullseye back in action. He broke out of prison in a really weird scene where he's getting stitches on his face, and for whatever reason they unlock his hands and he kills a guy with a tooth. Bullseye breaks out and decides he's going to kill Kingpin, we get Heather Glenn say that she saved herself, which in fairness she did, because the show didn't let Daredevil finish the fight with the Daredevil villain. Now, Bullseye, after breaking out of prison, gets his hands on a sniper rifle and is going to kill Kingpin when Matt jumps in front of it and saves Kingpin's life. Now, I thought that this was actually a potential turning point, because this could have created a really interesting dynamic going into the finale episode. Now that Matt's injured, how is he going to be able to defend Hell's Kitchen? What's it going to do to Matt's psyche that he just saved Kingpin, the man who he himself has considered killing in the past? And most importantly, are they going to work together to fight Bullseye, or is this going to be a one-man show? Now, episode 9 decided to answer none of those questions, because instead of being injured or anything like that, Matt instead gets up and walks out of the hospital. Episode 9 finally brings back Deborah Ann Wool's Karen Page and John Bernthal's Punisher. John Bernthal and Charlie Cox have a great fight scene in Matt Murdock's apartment where they fight dirty cops. I don't love the slow motion action that happens in it, but overall, I do love the scene. I think it's great to watch the banter between the two, where Punisher's like, "Are you going to take a bullet for this guy?" and shoots a random guy as Daredevil's just trying to get him to stop. It's always great to see Daredevil in a costume, because this show did not want to put him in it, but they finally did in this episode. We get to see some action, and that was great. We also get to see the most brutal scene in any Marvel show ever, or movie for that matter, when Kingpin rips a guy's face off. Now, this scene was shocking, which is kind of why I think it was included in, but overall, it doesn't really save episode 9 from kind of just being a mediocre episode, because there's another cool fight scene where Punisher goes to kill the dirty cops and nothing happens. He gets captured, and that's the end of that. Now, Daredevil is looking at all the dirty cops, and he's going to go fight him, and Karen Page says, "No, you're not going to go do that." So he decides not to. Then we get a speech from Matt where he says that the real Daredevil was the friends we made along the way, which that is not a joke. He literally says, "We are the city without fear." And he says, "We're going to need an army," only to reveal Josie, the bartender, Cherry, and 3 other police officers who are somehow going to take out an entire task force of dirty cops. And that's how the series ends. Now, why would I say the Marvel Cinematic Universe is in the middle of an identity crisis? Like I said, Born Again was literally a layup. All you had to do was have Charlie Cox as Daredevil fighting a street-level villain in Muse, as Kingpin, played by Vincent D'Onofrio, worked his way up in the background. They couldn't do this. It's a very simple concept. It might not have been the most amazing show ever written, and it might not have even been better than any of the Netflix seasons. It still would have been a solid 6 to 7 out of 10 show. Not that that would have mattered, because Daredevil Born Again did not even chart on the Nielsen streaming charts. It was Disney Plus's worst performing show that they've ever had, because even a show like Agatha All Along managed to chart on Nielsen streaming charts. This show has great scenes like Punisher and Daredevil arguing in Punisher's lair, or even Kingpin ripping a guy's face off, or Matt in the courtroom, or Hector Ayala's monologue at the opening of episode 3, or John Bernthal and Charlie Cox's fight scene in episode 9. But the problem is that barely outweighs any of the bad in its own episodes. Whether it's Fiddle Faddle Guy, or Matt Murdock getting lectured by Angela Ayala, Kirsten McDuffie, Fiddle Faddle Guy again, Cherry, who is, like I said, the most useless character in this show. Heck, Kamala Khan's dad was more important to the story than Cherry was. Now, this show had the potential to kind of rebuild some hype in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Captain America Brave New World was a commercial and critical disaster. The story was not good. The movie was extremely expensive despite the reported $180 million budget. The mass amount of reshoots proved to the point that that was likely not the actual budget. And even if it was, it still lost money in the end. All of this was off the back of the success that was Deadpool and Wolverine, which was off of multiple failures by Marvel. They have not been able to nail down what they want the future of the MCU to be. And we are at a crossroads in the superhero franchise. Superhero fatigue is coming, and it's real. I think this was very notable with Daredevil Born Again, which, like I said, the first 2 episodes were pretty solid. And it still did not garner enough attention from normal fans and normal audience members to tune in. Now, Thunderbolts, it could be a fun movie. It looks like it's not going to be anything too serious, and I am going to look forward to seeing it and reviewing it. That is not the ultimate point. The ultimate crossroads for the superhero franchise comes later this summer, with Fantastic Four and Superman releasing really close to each other. I have just lost all faith that either of these movies will be good. DC never had faith. They can't make anything good, and when they do, they squander it. Just like with The Batman and Penguin, we aren't getting The Batman 2 anytime soon, because DC doesn't know how to connect 2 successes together. Fantastic Four could have been very great, and then they decided to bring in female Silver Surfer, who is not Norrin Rad from the comics. And yes, I know female Silver Surfer is in different comic panels, but she has nothing to do with the story of Coming of Galactus. And while I'm sure that Avengers Doomsday is going to be a lot of fun with a lot of great cameos and callbacks to old school movies, there's just no faith that I think the story is going to be good, because they haven't had a good story dating all the way back to Avengers Endgame. Even Spider-Man No Way Home, which was a lot of fun and a great movie, did not have that strong of a story. It had great actors, it had great scenes, it had great moments, but at the end of the day, the story itself is not that great. And this has been the MO for recent Marvel projects, whether it's just random gender swapping of characters or bait and switches, like with a show called Hawkeye where Kate Bishop was the main character, as well as not showing the actual superheroes on screen. This is a problem I have with Moon Knight, where we barely get to see Moon Knight on the show at all, and it's very present in Daredevil, where we don't get Daredevil in his suit. Daredevil, outside of episode 1, had not worn his suit since Defenders in 2017. This season of Daredevil Born Again has left me with zero faith that season 2 is going to be good. Now, the Punisher scenes being alright does give me hope that the Punisher special presentation will be at least solid, and with a shorter runtime, and honestly, Punisher not needing all that much story to be an entertaining watch, very similarly to a John Wick kind of movie, I think that the Punisher special presentation can be very good. All of this could have been done in a 1-hour short film released on Disney Plus as build-up to Daredevil Born Again, which could have been season 2. Overall, Daredevil Born Again's biggest sin is being boring. Just like the title says, I was bored again. This show is just boring at times. It moves very slowly, and despite the showrunner Dario Scardapane saying that the original Netflix series had too much navel gazing, this season of Daredevil Born Again is the epitome of navel gazing. Nothing happens through half of the episodes. We don't get to see Daredevil. We barely get to see Muse, who is killed off unceremoniously. We have annoying side characters and useless scenes like Fiddle Faddle Guy, or we built this city on rock and roll. Daredevil Born Again could have been great. Unfortunately, it seems like with the identity crisis, Disney might just not any longer be able to make good shows. If you made it this far, thank you for listening. Consider subscribing, and I will see you in the next one.